Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 483, Order of Business 15.
Order of Business 15.
Hard to know where to start, Mr. Speaker. We have been calling this a commerce tax, but in fact it is a gross income tax on businesses. So I think we, number one, need to call it what it really is, you know. Last session we had 15 Republicans in this. We today have 25, and it has to do directly with question 3. 429,000 Nevadans said no. And I would be willing to bet that, and that's 4 out of every 5, and I would bet almost 5 out of 5 of members of my party said no to that. The governor himself aggressively said, no way are we going to have a margins tax, yet this is exactly what it is. The education question needs to be addressed because there's a certain sense of deja vu. If you go back to 2005 in this very chamber, you heard Governor Gwynn standing right there, and he said these very words. The Governor's Commission on Excellence in Education will oversee this unprecedented influx of funding for public education. In 2003, they passed an $800 million tax increase, which was exclusively for education, and the Governor said, quote, I will mandate a system of checks and balances to ensure that this funding produces results for our children. I'll challenge anyone to find those results. So once again, we're going to raise taxes and spend it on education. Where are the performance and accountability metrics, the checks and balances from the last $800 million tax increase that we had in this very body? I would challenge us to say before we go and spend more of the taxpayers' money on these programs, we find out what happened to the money that we've already spent, which is consistently what everybody in the state of Nevada has requested. They don't have any problem spending more money. And by the way, our current budget for total K through 12 per year is $4.2 billion. So while we heard some members from the South suggesting that we don't have books in our classrooms, I would certainly ask, why don't we have books in our classrooms when we're spending $4.2 billion? So I would suggest the first thing we should do is start with, what did we do with the money previously? Now, there are some excellent programs, and I would agree that the Read by 3 program is certainly something that we should look at. So I'm not suggesting that all of the education package, there are 17 components to it, by the way, Mr. Speaker. Some of those are excellent. But again, those are the kind of things we should discuss and then go on item by item rather than do this, let's just throw more money at it and think it's going to work. Now, the most critical portion of this whole tax is this commerce tax, which has 27 different components in it. 27 different things for the business community. And now, every single business in Nevada will have to provide and open their books, whether they qualify for that $4 million floor, which, as my colleague from the South correctly pointed out, will consistently drop over the next few years. This is a safe prediction. Every business in Nevada basically has to be audited or face the threat of audit by some new agency within the Department of Taxation. Call it what you will, but it's some form of an IRS arrangement. There isn't also, you know, this building really is a bubble. When we were all running for office, the voters were so smart, and we went to every door asking them to support us. And once we get in this place where we have hardly any contact with those people, suddenly those same voters, 429,000 of them, aren't nearly as intelligent as these dozens of very well-paid, high-dollar lobbyists who come in here and tell us how those 429,000 people were wrong. Now, I would suggest we pierce that bubble, because there's one thing I have learned. As a small businessman, you know how many lobbyists are out there that represent the small businessman? Just about none. None. So while we sit here and listen to these experts, and we have the entire governor's staff busy lobbying all the members of this body on those swing votes consistently for, what, a week and a half now, to where virtually every day the entire staff is standing at the entrance to this chambers, I think we should say to ourselves, are those the people that we promised that we would support when we got elected? No, they're not. So what I'm going to reiterate is that we were elected, every one of us, there are 65,000 people in our district. And you really think that the 80% of those 65,000 that said no to a margins tax are too stupid now to know that we are somehow so much smarter than them, and we in our infinite wisdom are going to reject them. In my entire life, and I have been involved in Nevada politics since I was 4 years old, sitting on my dad's shoulders watching Barry Goldwater at the Reno airport, I've never seen a mandate like this. 80% of the voters said no, and now we're going to sit here and we're going to say, we're smarter than you. We are going to reject what you did in that election cycle. We're going to ramrod down your throats this new so-called commerce tax. I think it's disgraceful. So, in winding up, we haven't even covered the BLF, but I already did a little bit on the earlier amendment. But this is also going to bump those numbers way up, and we're going to see even more of those corporations, non-residents, driven out of the state if this bill passes as it is. So one other thing I want to cover real quick, Mr. Speaker. When our governor, because a lot of people are saying, why aren't you supporting the governor? I'll tell you, I do support the governor. I support the governor that we thought we elected when we elected him. For example, here's his handout. Stop job-killing tax increases. Brian Sandoval opposes a corporate income tax that will kill Nevada jobs and weaken our ability to compete for new business. That's the one I'm supporting. So with that, also one last thought on class size reduction. There's $400 million that we're budgeting in this whole thing for class size reduction. The Department of Education was audited by our own LCB audit staff, and they found that they had spent $381 million on class size reduction, and they didn't follow any of the procedures laid out by statute, by what we did. Basically, they spent all that money, and nobody knows exactly what it did. $381 million, by the way, would buy an awful lot of books. So before we spend any more money, I would encourage this body to insist. What happened to all that audit stuff from Kenny Gwynn's days? 10 years have gone by, and here we are again. Let's dump more money into education. Let's sap all that money out of the private sector. Let's force all those small businesses that are still struggling in this economy to pay more and more tax dollars, in spite of the fact our economy is still lousy. Have them pay in when we haven't even accounted for the $800 million tax increase from 2005. So I would urge this body to vote no on 483 and acknowledge what the voters told us to do here. And I think that the voters were very wise, and I think that we need to recognize that out of 429,000 of them, they probably have collectively more wisdom than the 42 of us do, in spite of being aggressively lobbied by the best lobbyists that you can buy, as well as the governor's entire staff. So I would suggest you think very carefully about this vote, because of all the votes we've taken this entire session, this is the one. This is the one that your feet are going to be held accountable to when you go to your district and say, what are you doing? All your campaign literature said you're going to vote no, yet you voted yes on it. Well, you know what, Mr. Voter? We're smarter than you. We know better than you. You didn't get to talk to the experts like we did. I would encourage all my colleagues to acknowledge what the voters told us to do and vote no on Senate Bill 483. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Assemblyman Edwards.